I just wanna hold your hand. I just
wanna hold your
hands.
Yeah, it's Monday. It's Monday, and it's 3 p.m. PST. So, rather predictably, it's time for the podcast.
Where we discuss things.
Indeed.
We just talk.
Yeah.
There's no gameplay.
Nope.
It's
This is the gameplay.
It's just Jacob and I just saying things.
Yep.
Even if like the things we say aren't necessarily that like original or
surprising.
That
okay. All right. No, straight up. Before we get into the podcast proper, that is actually something that I feel like a lot of people diss a bit or don't give enough credit to. Just because something is not an original thought, that does not take away from the value of it.
Sure.
Because acknowledging the good ideas and things like that, and those helpful bits of ideas. Well, yeah, I'm not exactly using the best words for this, but the point is, just because something is an original doesn't mean it's not good, and that reminding people of that is important.
It is important.
So,
but
yeah,
welcome
that's
everyone
what we're doing.
to podcast 156. We have ourselves a very interesting topic that Jacob and I are quite fond of bringing up in light doses.
Right.
When it is applicable to a lot of the anime that we are discussing.
Because you have definitely not heard us talk about this kind of topic before. I mean, one of my favorite catchphrases definitely isn't that vanilla is a good flavor. But, besides the point. Yeah, welcome.
Yeah. Dang, a podcast. I don't know, man. Just watching you guys talk sounds weird. SMH.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. Original and novel ideas are great, but excellent execution is worth its weight in gold. See, I feel like this is the integral point for every anime fan's cycle of life, if you will, is that eventually you come to the point where you don't care about number ratings or 3 episode counts or anything like that, and you just want to watch anime because you love anime. But then you've watched so much anime. I don't think I'm anywhere near this point, but I can see it on the horizon.
Off in the distance.
Where nothing is necessarily going to wholly surprise you. It's going to have surprising elements and surprising little bits flashing around here and there. But the overall thing that you're looking for is just a good damn time.
Yep.
Just a good time,
Yeah.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I don't think that comes usually in the concept for the most part with regards to the anime. I think it comes down to how they execute said concept.
Right. And while that is something that I definitely think is an aspect of why a lot of us love anime,
True.
True. I know for myself, I got very disillusioned with Western media when I started to see just how predictable a lot of it was, and
so like you could say it was cliched, or the formula was starting to bother you,
right? Because I'm not sure if this is maybe jumping ahead too far into the podcast discussion, but having something be predictable, like that's in a lot of ways how we shill things to each other, right? Here's this show, it's basically this but with this twist or whatever, right? You know, because we want to be able to have that question answer kind of resolution. But you only want that when you're able to choose it, right? And I think that's what burned me out on Western media, is that regardless of whether I wanted it or not, like, because sometimes I might be in the mood for a cop drama or a family drama or things like that, but eventually it was just like, okay, that's kind of all there is. So if I want something different, I kind of have to go really somewhere else, in order to get it.
I think, Psychronia, that's something that I'm just going to segue into a later point into the discussion, is the whole isekai trend that we've been enjoying for the last couple of years, or I would say longer than a few years, I would say. And I'm gonna touch on that whole thing there, because I've been rewatching a show again in preparation for doing reactions for it. By the way, since you guys are Twitch people, you actually get a little bit of a heads up on some of these things because of the crazy Halloween stream that happened recently.
Yep.
We're reacting to ReZero Season 2 soon. So get excited for that. But before we do any of that, let's give a shout out to one of our recent VIP patrons, returning actually as a VIP patron.
Indeed.
Status Alive.
Thank
Good
you.
to see you back on the Discord and Patreon. So
great to have you.
Thank you so much for all the support over the years.
Straight up.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And Amaju, I literally almost had that line be like a point for this podcast, like for the stuff I was bringing in, because predictability isn't bad. Like when it's called fantasy, there's a reason for that. There is a good reason.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys, let's get into this. Losgar, thank you so much for the Twitch Prime. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have ourselves a lot of anime that we've watched now because of the channel. And in some ways, it's changed a lot of our perspectives, viewpoints, and tastes even with regards to anime. I think that one of my favorite packages of anime that we've experienced recently, and it just shows in the reactions, I would say, is an anime that I can just say this line and you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. Is like, it's one of the most predictably unpredictable shows in anime, and everyone loves it and memes it to death because of that, in that it is exceptionally predictable and perfectly unpredictable at times. And I'm gonna go into that anime eventually. But that is basically the point. There are predictable elements in every anime that you watch, and it's just a question of how much does that, help your immersion, help you get into the anime and enjoy it more, and how much does it sometimes just pull you out of the anime.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, if you've you probably haven't seen too many of these, because they usually don't make it into like anything that takes a lot of production value behind it, because they usually don't do well. But have you ever seen something that was just absolutely and utterly alien as far as like it didn't fit into any pre-established story tropes or things like that? Like, not it plays into them and then very cleverly subverts them and does something unique, but just doesn't fit in at all.
Yeah, you feel like you're looking at an abstract piece of art
Yeah.
that has just enough familiarity in that it has like characters, for instance.
Sure.
But like, it's so barely something that you can hold on to and follow that you feel like you're constantly like shifting in your seat, like you would in a horror movie that's really getting you like antsy and stuff.
But not necessarily in a good way, because I feel like even with horror movies.
Oh
okay,
yeah, horror.
All right,
we weren't even going to talk.
We weren't even going to talk horror, but let's talk horror for a second.
Just briefly though.
Just briefly.
Yeah.
Scary, jump scares, it induces you into that physical sense of anticipating what's going to happen, because bad things are going to happen, but it's not about whether bad things are going to happen, it's about how they're going to happen, at what exact point is the jump scare going to come.
How is the build-up going to take you up to that point, and then will it be able to take you back down after that so that it can build up to another jump scare?
Right, but if you had something that was just completely didn't fall into any sort of recognized pattern, it would just be chaotic to try and enjoy it. Like
it might even end up just being a comedy. And a lot of
not necessarily intentionally.
Not necessarily intentionally. A lot of the people that I know that watch horror intentionally do it to laugh at it, because horror is a genre, especially in live action, that requires way less monetary setups in order to start. So a lot of them have a huge range of quality. So it is fun for them to watch basically shitty horror movies, because you can laugh at their elements of predictability and then kind of give those little golf claps to the moments where they really did something kind of fun and creative and imaginative. So it's the elements of where formula and cliche meets basically the point of not necessarily just what's happening on the screen at any given time, but how it's happening.
Right. Because if you think about it, right, let's say you want to tell a story. You could probably wrap up the story to any, good, and you could probably summarize any good story with a single sentence.
Probably.
Right?
It's fun to do that, actually. I recommend doing that.
Yeah, it is a fun exercise, right?
See if you can come up with like the best one for like a specific story.
And that can give really awesome insight into sort of the inner workings behind the story, right?
True.
But that doesn't make for an entertaining story.
True.
Even if you have a one-sentence story that, ended up being made into something really good, it's not because of the one-sentence story. It's about because, and from that standpoint, there might be a ton of like movies or shows or things like that all have the same or basically the same one-sentence story. That's the hero's journey or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's more about how is this one going to do it?
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And I feel like there are a ton of great stories out there that end up getting discounted because people basically look at it and they say, I've seen that before. And it's like, well, you kind of have, but you haven't seen this one before. And sometimes, this one has its own way of doing it.
Yeah, sometimes you literally have seen a large, overwhelming majority of it before. But one of the things that I think is easy for a lot of us to fall into, especially when I try to put on my critic hat, which is something I think I should never do personally. I am way too subjective in terms of my thought process. Like everyone's subjective in some ways manner, but I have a hard time actually going into closer to objective kind of lines of thinking in general. Is that I'm actually not really seeing something unoriginal. What I'm doing is I'm focusing on specific elements that I didn't like, that pulled me out of my immersion, and then attaching them to other things that are just similar. And that's just is what people do. We're pattern matching beings. That's something that makes our lives way easier in general. But a lot of anime, specifically with the anime regards to things there are so many cliches in it that we all just kind of accept and go along with because they actually help the story. Yeah. And they do nothing to break our immersion. Or maybe they don't anymore.
Well, and this is like us getting on this soapbox here, talking about the power of predictability. That's because we think that it's something that's often underappreciated. Right. That doesn't mean that it is always a good thing.
True.
Right?
Often, very true.
Like, predictability can definitely bog something down. Usually when I see that happening, it's because not that the what happens gets predictable, but the how of what happens gets predictable, and it doesn't, it doesn't feel inventive or really necessary, maybe forced or whatever. And that might be where those cliches, it's not that the cliches exist or are there, but they're not being used for their intended purposes, right? It's just sort of a catch-all thing that you can do to, paint by numbers, here you go, here's the story, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is where the whole element of why I would say most of us like anime is that it is an imaginative medium. The medium of anime is such that we are having these drawings come to life. It's nostalgic for any of us that have even remotely been in an inner world of our own making at times, creating this fantasy whatever with characters doing whatever. Yeah. But that imagination can be explored in many different facets. We particularly find the imagination regarding the story to be the one that's the most engaging. One, because we're not artists, so we don't necessarily see as much into the depth of that there. Right. But when a story then takes a character archetype or something that we've seen many times before, and sometimes like too much, like way too much, and just adjusts it by like 3 degrees in a way that we hadn't seen maybe in a while. Not that it in of itself is unique, but it's in a setting in combination with all these other things that it's attached to where we go, oh, thank you. That was an intentional decision made by someone that just thought that this would be better. And we subjectively kind of go, yeah, we agree.
We like it. Yeah.
That's something that we really appreciate. Yeah. Yeah. So how it happens. I think that this is something that can be got into via a couple examples here. One of the anime angles that I would say is really tricky to hit because anime is becoming a much more global product is comedy. Comedy in anime is, in my opinion, one of the areas where predictability is actually probably one of the more helpful things in general. Because anime is being told from a Japanese perspective, plenty of the times, there are a lot of instances where the comedy is such that you are not going to be able to follow it necessarily if you do not understand certain elements about the culture or what have you with regards to the actual like punchline and what have you. This is something that I have struggled with in many anime as a Western viewer from the Pacific Northwest who couldn't tell you like 99% of the things with regards to Japanese culture that they're bringing up here. But some of my favorite anime ever end up being comedies that take predictable elements from something that are universally translatable. Like, for instance, in Konosuba, a lot of the jokes with regards to Konosuba are basically all the delivery. The punchline in and of itself is usually not super original.
Right. Megumin will want to explode things. Aqua will be useless and or dumb.
Yep.
Darkness will be horny. Like, that's...
Yep.
And Cosmo will have to deal with all
Exactly.
of it. Like,
none of it is super original once you've been into the show for about 4 or 5 episodes or so.
And that's part of where I think the laughs can come from, because it's the... I understood that. Yep. I understood that reference, right?
I know exactly what Aqua's going to say. Not to the letter,
not quite,
but I know what style of response she's going to give here. Yep. Oh, there she is, begging, crying for her bottle and everything like that, and it's wondrous. And then yes, there will be unpredictability at times, like the first time you see her vomit rainbows, you're like,
oh, that's fun.
Oh, that's a thing.
Yeah.
But then anytime in comedy you then want to add that little bit of extra, I would say, emotional predictability in this, like nostalgic predictability, is when you make that reference back to a gag that you've already used in the show with just that little bit of extra pizzazz to it. You can tell that gag is coming, but actually like how it's executed is slightly different than the way it's been done before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the whole idea of catharsis in storytelling, like that moment where you just have that sense of vindication or rightness with something that happens in the story.
Yep.
Whether you're talking comedy or drama or action or whatever, right? That comes from predictability, because you've basically made a promise to the audience that, hey, I'm going to do this. Spandam is going to get punched, right? Aqua is going to be an idiot, right? Something is going to happen, and I'm going to tell you, even if it's not in straightforward, obvious terms, but I'm going to tell you beforehand, sometimes well beforehand, that that's coming, right? And then I'm going to build up to it so you can anticipate it, and then it'll happen, and you'll laugh or you'll cry or you'll cheer or whatever, and it'll be great. And a lot of times, I feel like that's something that is ignored for the sort of reverse of the surprise, right? Because surprises can be great. They can have... they can be fantastic, and the ideal surprise in my mind is something where you realize, oh no, they were telling us this was going to happen the whole time.
Yep.
So that it's kind of like a double dipping.
True.
But oftentimes surprises can just end up sort of chaotic, and for the sake of the immediate shock of the surprise, rather than actually like something that will still be good looking back on it, like you'll be able to get the same amount of enjoyment from it the second time.
That's why I think certain comedies are rewatchable and others aren't. This is the difference between formula and cliche in that regard. When a cliche is used, and in some ways, I would say almost abused, basically, it's something where they're wanting to make sure that the audience actually understands that this is the gag, this is the part where you're supposed to laugh. It's kind of the laugh track with regards to, kind of sitcoms and stuff in general. I personally cannot rewatch most sitcoms in general. I need a serious plot in order to get into it. I know a lot of people can, but that is one of the areas where, with regards to how gags are repeated and brought up, or a character is boiled down to a shtick like explosion, that part is predictable. But you don't then make their entire character surrounding that cliche at every given time.
Well, and if you do, you need to get imaginative within that, right?
Exactly.
If Megumin started being stupid and useless, and that would feel weird. That wouldn't be as enjoyable, because it's like, hey, that's Aqua's territory.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if the only thing Megumin ever did was yell explosion and fall over, and it was just the same every time, that'd get kind of old, right? And I think laugh tracks, like, I didn't even think about those, but the reason that, even though I don't like them, I don't like laugh tracks, right? But the reason that they were brought up in the first place was because, well, it was kind of, I feel like it was to sort of...
There's a whole history there.
A whole history there.
One of the reasons.
But one of the reasons, I feel like, is to sort of make up for if the writing isn't that bad and they don't properly tell you the joke and the build-up and all that stuff.
Isn't that good?
Huh?
You mean the writing isn't that good?
Oh. Yes, right. If it isn't that good, then, and they don't properly build you up for that cathartic moment of laughter, then okay, we'll have a laugh track in there to kind of tell you this is that moment of catharsis. Yay!
When you laugh.
There's when you laugh.
Anime does this too, actually. Anime does this too. It's in the little moments where the character has the tear come down their eye there, the moments where they put some kind of a visual thing over their eyes or what have you, or they make them do a little bit of a like smug kind of facial reaction and stuff. Now, those I'd say are better.
Yes.
Just overall, I prefer those. But it is kind of a thing of telling you, this is what the character's feeling.
Here's the moment. Right.
And if anything, I think the reason why it works is it's because it's a in-universe character reaction. So that's just a good part of comedy and stories.
Here's one of the ones that I generally don't like, though.
Ooh,
in anime specifically.
Yeah.
Is the over-exaggerated, angry, or frustrated thing that happens. Right? Where it's like, blah, 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 something happens, and then they're like, what? And then they say the punchline, or they get pissed or something like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works. Sometimes it fits in line with the character and all that stuff. But sometimes I'll see those and I'll be like, that was way overreacted. Right? That was literally to just try and highlight an otherwise kind of mediocre joke and say, isn't this funny?
Yeah. There was something happened like that in a show that we recently reacted to, where it. Oh, hold on. Twitch.
I'm dropping some frames.
Twitch. Don't be like this.
Be predictable, Twitch.
Yeah, come on, Twitch, be consistent.
And not predictably unpredictable. No.
Exactly. There was a show that we were reacting to recently, recording up an episode for it, where a character got a little bit emotionally flustered with this and did an overly dramatic response to it. But it led to a comedy joke where the character then was set up in a way to then basically deliver a punchline that we didn't see coming. So the predictably cliched response of, how could you do this? I'm going to hit you really hard in this way. And then, oh God, Twitch still acting up here. Hold on, give it a little bit of time here. Yeah, King of Crimson. Okay, we should be back
Looks
here.
Good.
It's actually pretty hit or miss right now. Oh, that's funny. Okay, I think we're good. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, because it led into another joke, the unpredictability of that joke kind of helped, at least for me, kind of skip over the fact that it went into that cliche for the sake of having that cliched response. But it was actually a setup for a joke's-based formula.
Right, it's almost like it's saying, that wasn't the actual punchline.
Right. The punchline is coming in the next few seconds. And then when the punchline came, it hit pretty hard. Humphrey Brogar with the 200 bits. Thank you so much. I love this topic. Perhaps of an admittance of frustration, but I often find reactors, reviewers jumping at the chance and the feeling of, I called it, which irks me considering that they often miss the entire context of what happened within whatever show, and the whole plot versus story discussion, and then what literally happens versus what those actions mean.
Yeah.
Very true.
And the whole thing of like, I called it, like, on the negatives, I feel like of where that often comes from is the haha, I was right. Look at how smart I am.
Look at how smart I am.
Right. But then on the other standpoint, it can be this wonderfully vindicating thing of, yes, the writer's thinking the same things that I am, right?
Yeah.
Because especially, or at least for me, if it's something where I'm thinking, oh, I think this is going to happen for these particular reasons because I think this character thing lines up with this other thing. Okay, cool. It happened that way. I'm not reading it wrong.
Even if you're reading the reasons why slightly off, the fact that you were able to follow the story's meta narrative along those lines, that means you're basically on the same wavelength as a creator in some facet, to where when the story goes to do things again in some kind of a twisty or unpredictable nature, and you're able to be like, no, I'm following it, that means in some ways the original kind of intent or desire of the hints, the cues, the visual storytelling or what have you is bringing you along for a journey. This is in some ways why I think visual storytelling in general is one of the most important things you can do in any kind of narrative. It's probably why I love anime so much, is that there is all this extra opportunity for intentionally unfiltered visual storytelling to make its way through to what we get as the audience. Whereas in live action, you have to deal with the translation of the actor's portrayal of what the original design of the story was to be through their own kind of, execution. So you can get some things that miss in that regard. That's why when people talk about great movies, oftentimes they talk about how good the acting is or how much a person's performance pulled you in entirely into the overarching narrative. But in anime, it's really a lot of times just the voice acting execution of a really impactful moment, or like the style of the way a person talks.
Sure, or even how they're drawn, which can include those visual cues of the the veins popping out or the sweat drop or whatever.
Yeah, I really like also the speed at which anime particularly does its directing with regards to having a shot that establishes a character's thoughts, feelings, what have you, for a slight little bit as a visual form of storytelling, and trusts the viewer that we're only going to show this for about 2.2 seconds. And
but that'll be enough.
You have to basically infer a little bit on that based on what images preceded the actual little clip that we just gave you there. So predictability in general is something that's all throughout your anime, all throughout your stories.
Yeah.
It's just the kind of things that we accept as being predictable versus the things where we would like to be a little bit surprised, which is valid. It's very important to have that in a story.
Right. But like I feel like people don't realize often just how prevalent it is. Like it is everywhere. And then it's not about whether it's there, it's about how cleverly can you disguise it. Yep. Like just listing off like the genres I can think of where it's like the predictability is a fundamental aspect of the story. Well, most Western media like cop dramas and things like that and family dramas and the like, but also things like mysteries, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Like if you have a mystery story, show, whatever, book, you might not know who done it, but you know that someone done it. You know there's going to be a murder or a thing of mystery, right? Yep. And then the main character is going to go into it. There'll be some twists along the way, and then they'll resolve it, and it'll be great. The medical dramas,
most of the time,
yeah, most of the time, the medical dramas where you can have 8 seasons of watching, or however many seasons it was, of watching Dr. House be like, what is it? I think it's this. Oh, it's not that, and just wonder what it is for 45 minutes before he comes to the conclusion, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that it's portrayed is something that was able to be entertaining to a lot of people.
True.
Also the whole romantic tragedy. That in like, yes, and this is not so much a genre as like a specific story type, right?
That goes down to like old human history.
Whether you're talking about like every single Nicholas Sparks novel ever, or Your Lie in April, or whatever, right? There are so many of them, and they'll there will be huge groups of people that are specifically looking out for these kinds of stories, even though they know that there's going to be some awesome romance between the two main characters. Yep. They're going to help each other grow, and then one of them's going to die. And then one of them's going to die, and the other person will have to cope with their loss, right? Like, but life goes on. Like that. There you go. I just said the entire story for like dozens of anime and books and things like that.
Oh yeah.
But that's not going to make the people who like those stories ever stop going to them.
True.
Right?
True.
Because everyone, it's different,
Exactly.
And they want to see exactly how that one handles it. I love Your Lie in April. Is Your Lie in April basically just a Nicholas Sparks novel made into an anime? Yep. Yes. I love it.
I mean, you had already seen it when we'd done the reactions and stuff, but I'm sure you were able to predict a lot of the way things would go around the same times I was predicting them as well.
Yes, I didn't at the very beginning predict the twist at the end, but I had a feeling of it like, wait, that seems like that's what's going on here, but it's telling me this other thing, And there were some surprises along the way.
Totally.
But it's a journey where we know it's we're familiar with this type of roller coaster ride. But that doesn't mean we don't enjoy riding it.
Exactly. And sometimes, I would say a lot of the times, the reason why we go to that ride is we know what kind of experience we're going to get. So, let's talk about sports anime. And this is a genre that I don't have an ounce of experience with, really.
Other than Haikyuu and Ippo, yeah.
Other than Haikyuu and Ippo.
And those are two very good sports anime to be, our windows into it.
But. Right, but like, let's be like
Let's
real,
be real
here. Seriously.
Those shows are insanely predictable.
Extremely predictable.
Unbelievably predictable. They
Yep.
do surprise us every once in a while, and but I mean, the story wouldn't be there if it wasn't about this team or this, sports player or whatever going and doing their thing. And most of the time that involves being the best like no one ever was,
Yep.
right?
It involves them having some kind of experience or hurdle that they have to overcome in order for them to integrate with their friends, and then by the power of the passion of their friendship, bring about some wonderful story about them climbing and just clawing their way up to the top. Now, is this story something that's been done tons of times? I don't have to go to like Google to find out just to know that this is the case.
Yeah.
No. I watched live action sports, kind of general things like that, movies and shows of that nature.
Rudy, Remember the Titans, all kinds of movies.
There's a whole bunch of them. Warrior, like there's so many specific ways you can just do the thing where we know at the end they're gonna have the big match where even if they don't win, they win the emotional struggle that they were working towards from the beginning.
Right. Usually it involves them winning, and if they don't win, usually that's not the end of the story. Like the whole idea of the team of people that are, they're a new crew or whatever. Like this could be in military settings. This could be in sports. This could be in adventures, tournaments. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
It's always just, you get another step of the journey. And on that step of the journey, we might get some twists. But you know that overall, by the end of the show, by the end of the book or whatever, we're going to go from here, which is a commonly established point, and that's why you get into the story, because you know what you're getting into. And then by the end, we'll be with
somewhere way ahead.
Usually you can pinpoint pretty closely where they'll be. The details you might not be clear on, but they'll go the distance. They'll do whatever it was they were supposed to do.
Yep. Some of the things that I really, really appreciate about this genre, specifically with regards to anime, because anime is a little bit more exaggerated with the emotions in general comparatively to something like live action, at least in the American sense. I don't know what it is in other countries. But Ippo and Haikyuu, for instance, all of our characters that we focus on love the sport that they're doing. Like, for the most part. And even if they don't like it as much as the other characters, those people will end up liking it. There is almost this unspoken predictability aspect of it that the main character will never quit the sport that they're doing.
Sure.
And it's like, wait a minute. Why not?
Well,
there are some that actually get into that. We'll talk about Ping Pong the animation if we want to talk about ways you can make it unpredictable.
But here's the thing.
Here's the thing, yeah.
So Ping Pong the animation, as an example, because it is a sports anime, is unpredictable from the standpoint in that it differentiates itself from most other sports anime because it takes a different spin on things.
Yeah.
But once you start watching the show, no, it's not that unpredictable.
Exactly.
You know exactly the kind of tone it's taking. So even if you don't know exactly when these kinds of things will happen and with which characters, you know that it's not going to go the traditional path. Right?
And that's about setting the expectations and then managing them over the course of the story. That's why, in some ways, a lot of people really love long-running shonen series specifically because they tell you at the beginning very well, the good ones, the ones that succeed, they tell you where the ending of the story is going, what the promise is to the viewer of, on this journey, it's going to be hella long.
Yep.
But you know that these three things are going to be accomplished. We're going to make some friends along the way. Going to be the pirate, king or what have you.
Luffy will become king of the pirates.
He's going to explore this world or what have you. And you are going to have a lot of fun, and it will be this type of fun. Like, it'll be wacky fun. It'll be heavy fun. It'll be, it
might even change it up over the course of the story.
Sure. Yeah.
But you know that You know, there is no question in your mind.
Yep.
Luffy will become the king of the pirates. He'll find the One Piece, whatever. Deku will become the greatest hero.
Yep.
Like the JoJo legacy will continue. Like that kind of a thing, right? The one to end it all will be Star Platinum.
Right.
There is no question about that. There's no doubt. One of the other areas that I think this is displayed quite well. It's not always used in this genre, but I think it is very commonly used, is romance. So there's the romantic tragedies one, right?
True.
Where, the person ends up tragically dying because, they caught the flu or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But Toradora. Toradora is a favorite show of mine, right?
Yeah.
Toradora, I've seen some people complain that it doesn't have rewatch value because
It's so predictable.
it's so predictable, because at that point you know who ends up with who. But it literally tells you, like, from the very beginning, it's like, here's the two main characters, and they're both talking, not out loud, but, just sort of thinking about the idea of love. And they're both continuing the same conversation, same thought, oh, I wonder who the two main characters are.
Right.
I wonder who's going to
end up together.
I wonder who's going to end up together.
Huh.
No, it's
no shit, Sherlock. It's
blatantly
predictable.
obvious, right?
Yeah.
But that's not why you watch it. That's not why you love it.
Yeah.
When there ends up being tensions, when friendships get strained and things like that, and other potential love interests come along, it's not because you're wondering whether they're actually going to end up with the main character, right? No, it's because you want to see how the characters will handle this different turn of events. Because it's not about what happens. It's about whether you can sell that this is truly what the characters wanted to happen, that the decisions that they made that led them here were truly coming from their innermost being.
Yeah.
Usually, when endings go badly, I find, the ones that really piss people off, it's not because something was done that surprised them, but it's because a promise was broken, right?
Yep.
And because the promise was broken in a way that didn't make sense for the characters in their mind, right?
Right. Isn't that the classic thing of why so many people have, like, serious, like, hate boners for endings with regards to shows where characters just get together? Because somewhere along the way, like Naruto, I think, is one of those, for instance, where I've heard so many people are like, why did they force these relationships to happen?
Or Bleach, or yeah.
Oh, sure.
And let's go into some more stuff in recent memory. Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't the fact that Jaime died. It was the fact that they took his entire character arc up till now, shat on it, and threw it out the window, right? That's why people were pissed off, right? The fact that the Night King ended up getting defeated by Arya,
that's not the problem.
That's not the problem.
No.
The problem is that the long night the ended up being one actual night, like not even the full night, like it wasn't even dawn when he died. He just, like that's and people, had 7 or 8 seasons of build up for that shit, right?
Oh my God.
Like that's what pisses people off, and no, and yeah, you can joke about this all you want. But Domekano, the real problem with the Domekano ending was not who the main character ended up with. It was why the main character ended up with that person, right? Because that is absolutely not in line with any of the character building that had been happening until then. So,
oh my God. Rant on. Like, this is one of my favorite things. It's almost a little bit getting in vogue with the idea of where people are almost getting a little bit tired of people saying, but we subverted the expectations. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Sagacious Last, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub for 19 months. 50% off best sports anime.
Yes, 50% off is great. Excellent.
I haven't seen any free, but 50% off. That's that's some good stuff.
So, someone mentioned it. Do you want to go into?
I will go into it because I actually am one of those people that defend this show quite a bit.
Same.
So, one of the things that is tricky to do in a thriller type story in general is giving people a little bit of too unsubtle of hints, basically.
Oh, okay.
Erased is an anime that was very popular when it was released. I can tell you why it's popular, but I don't think you guys really need to know that. You guys know why it was popular. It did a couple things really well.
Yep.
One of the things that gave it a lot of negative feedback, though, was how it handled the ending and how it handled the fact that it was predictable as hell who done it.
Mm-hmm.
Just one thing that I feel like everyone forgets about Erased is not the ending, but it's how it began.
Exactly.
The story of Erased sets up a character that is severely flawed, has a lot of problems with regards to him knowing who he is, what he wants, and if he's even willing to go after what he wants. And it takes this ridiculously crazy situation that I'm not going to spoil in any way, because I actually highly recommend just sitting down. We'll watch it in like 2 nights.
And
it's a
watching it
show.
And without knowing anything about it.
Exactly.
It is a mystery, but
it is a mystery, but it is hella predictable with regards to who done it in that regard.
And by the way, for all y'all that are mad that it was, so obvious who it was, the mom literally figures it out in the first episode after like 5 minutes of realizing that it was a mystery.
If anything, though, the reason why I don't consider that to be the predictable part is just that the character design is such that you wouldn't necessarily immediately know with regards to who she ends up looking at in
sure. But the idea that it isn't about who it is, it's about the journey up till that, right? And the fact that, because of circumstances from the premise of the show that I won't say here for spoilers, that makes it incredibly difficult, even if us, the audience, know who it is.
Right, exactly. So, this character that we follow for the duration of Erased has a problem that he ends up overcoming primarily within his own character and such by how much care and effort he puts into the plot of Erased, basically. When we get to the end, and the happy ending for a character is not necessarily the one that you wanted, maybe that's a flaw in the story. Could be. I'm not going to debate whether or not it is, but it wasn't necessarily something that was promised with regards to the story's beginning. And that's something that I feel like is tricky when you have a story that gives certain promises with regards to the character's primary arc being about his desire to then go and write, manga and stuff. But, he's not giving a lot of himself into the work and stuff. So then the next thing he does in the story is he gives everything of himself to save someone.
Yep.
And we're upset about a pairing decision. It feels like...
But even then, if you think about it, that's because there was a certain expectation that was set for how the pairing would go, and it didn't end up going that way. People were mad that it wasn't predictable. Like, there's the whole complaints about the villain and everything, but whatever. But where most of the complaints I feel like actually come from that people really care about,
True.
Because everyone knew who the murderer was way before the end of the series.
So true.
Right? It was that the pairing that I wanted to happen didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well,
so I just wanted to bring that one up because in general I would say that a mystery thriller story has one of the biggest hurdles to overcome, and that is make sure you are not overtly predictable, because a lot of the entertainment factor that a lot of people come to specifically for thrillers and mysteries, or thrillers specifically, is that it's not entirely predictable. There's going to be some part where you're like, oh, I should have seen that coming, but you didn't for whatever reason. So,
there's a good question. So, did y'all think Made in Abyss was unpredictable? No.
Because no, not really.
They literally told us several times.
Don't go down there.
Well, don't go down there. And by the way, this is exactly what's going to happen when these certain triggers are met, right? So we're like, oh shit, that's crazy. Are they really meaning what it seems they're explicitly saying when they say that multiple times? Oh, they are. Okay.
They are.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That did not prepare me. Okay.
Yeah. What it was I was not able to trust that the anime was actually going to deliver on the terror that would be within the abyss.
Yeah.
It went above and beyond my expectations for what it promised me in the beginning of the story. And that's why it's so important that they spent so many episodes not going down into the abyss.
And in fact, I would say that them telling us exactly what was going to happen and that it was going to be terrifying is exactly why it worked. Because imagine if they tried to do all these terrifying things and it wasn't said beforehand that, oh yeah, by the way, it's going to be terrifying. Oh, by the way, episode 10, this is exactly what's going to happen. We didn't know it was going to happen in episode 10. Right? But they told us what it would be.
And then we saw it in full
and
full HD glory.
Yep.
Holy crap.
And it hurt the way it did because we knew it was going to happen. Because once that trigger started to be fulfilled, we're like, shit, no, oh God,
This is so
oh
bad.
God,
Yeah,
oh no, it's happening, oh, it's happening right in front of me, I'm seeing it happen, look away.
I think that's why also so many people attached themselves so quickly to Nanachi is because she was the unpredictable thing that saved us from the predictable thing.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Right, because it's the, oh God, this is so terrifying. There's nothing that they can really do to stop this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Please pull something out of left field to save us here.
Yep.
We were wrong. We didn't know.
We don't
were
want
naive.
the predictable thing. Please, anything but this predictable thing.
Oh my God, cute, adorable fluffiness.
Yes, just,
please come save us here. I really, really love Nanachi being then doubled down on as a character with the finale, which in my opinion, Made in Abyss Season 1 finale is one of the most perfect one cour finales you can get in that one cour experience. I think that I felt such deep carnal emotions over that whole experience because once we had crossed the barrier of episode 10, everything that had been promised was on the table and more.
Yep.
Meaning that once we got the backstory, it was just this coming dread. It was this iceberg looming on the horizon. I'm like, our Titanic is going to hit that.
Yep.
It is going to hit that, and you cannot save it. And I'm like, oh no, oh God. So that, I highly recommend Made in Abyss as a show. Very, very good stuff. Before we go into more questions, though, I want to talk about the show I promised everyone to talk about at the very beginning of the podcast. Let's talk about JoJo's, y'all.
Sure,
So JoJo's, I think, personally, is riddled with cliches.
Oh, definitely.
Riddled with cliches. But we have, personally, I think, the benefit of being able to go and watch all of it in one go. Imagine if you had just part 1 and you had to wait for part 2.
Well, I mean, waiting for part 2 in general just sounds like an awful idea, but
imagine that like you were watching JoJo's part 3 and you didn't know like what else was going to be coming next. Like, it might be the end of it.
You didn't
or
have the promise of we're going to go to Egypt and fight Dio.
Right. I feel like JoJo's strength, personally, I think why it's one of the greatest anime of all time, even, actually. I would say that this is probably
certainly one of the most iconic
anime of all time, is that in the story's formula, if you will, let's go into the formula here. We know that we're going to follow a JoJo, right?
On an adventure.
We're going to follow them on a bizarre adventure where there will be things that surprise you. Okay? You following me here? I'm setting up the predictability and the unpredictability. This JoJo is going to meet other people because they need to talk to someone. Unless they're Jotaro, then they could just talk to, yada yada themselves, basically.
Indeed.
But all that being said, what we actually get in the journey with regards to, JoJo's in general, is the most wacky, formulaic, just adventure of a bunch of dudes just going to do a thing that's usually established in the very first episode. I mean, JoJo's opening episodes are almost all perfect. And I want to make a big point of this specifically. I've heard a lot of people since I've caught up to part 5 talk about how it's all about whether that ending, hits, And I love JoJo part endings. I do. But I think JoJo's really nails it in the opening episodes of every single part. Every single part
even
of
part
JoJo's.
1,
part one is
a fantastic
incredible
opening.
I think this is where like the hidden analysis gem, if you will. Someone's got to make a video about this on YouTube because it's not going to be me, but someone's got to do it. JoJo opening episodes give you the exact expectations of what kind of story you're in for.
Yeah.
Do you remember Part 4's opening? Part 4's opening episode is so good. It's one of my favorites. It's morning, morning, morning,
Right.
Mario Radio.
Yep.
Good morning, and here for a Mario Radio. Like, that whole setup where we're getting just a visual thing as it pans over to reveal there's a hand just sitting there on that table next to a plate of food. Mm-hmm. You do not get an answer to what that is for a while into the part, but it's there, sitting in your mind. And then you realize we're going to be in this town. Then we go and actually meet the JoJo. Like, I love so much how each part basically just tells you, yeah, this is the type of story you're in for. And you're watching another part of JoJo, so you know kind of already what you've got to expect as well.
And it also follows that Monster of the Week formula where it's the, there will be another stand user, this next episode or set of
Most
episodes,
likely.
there will be another one. But it's not about whether there will be another one or whether, the protagonist will survive most of the time, but it's about what is it going to look like? What kind of crazy, wacky stand are we going to come up with?
Right.
How is the journey as they battle this stand, whether it be through, an actual physical battle, violent confrontation, or just a battle of wits, or realizing that, hey, you're a pretty cool dude.
Yep.
It could be any of those.
True.
But still, you know that on that next set of episodes, you're going to get this package where you'll get one more stand, and you'll be like, wow, that was really inventive. I love that character design, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that that's part of the reason why I personally love JoJo's, but I would love to hear from you guys in general. What elements of predictability in JoJo's are some of your favorites? And I know what a lot of the internets are because those are the things that get memed.
Sure.
The poses, the character designs, the dramatic voice acting, the really corny metaphors that are hyper-specific.
Yeah.
Like, all these things that are, like, JoJo references are just really decently, uniquely executed. Not necessarily uniquely, but they're just decently executed, cliches, if you will, that we all love the way they're executed. We love the way they're executed.
Sure.
We're addicted to it.
Yeah, when Jotaro punches the guy. Heck, the whole idea of and maybe this is, going a bit, way too specific with this, but the whole idea of, the hero's technique,
True.
Their secret technique or whatever that they have, it's so that we can know, when are they going to do the thing? Whether it's an energy blast or running away or ora, or whatever it is, right? We're like, when is it? All right, it's coming. Yep, eventually it's going to happen. There it is. It's kind of a form of humor, if you think about it.
It is a form of humor. Yeah, it's a punchline.
Sometimes.
It's a literal punchline.
Yeah.
It is the catharsis of basically the build-up, much like you would for the setup to a punchline. Okay, he's got to be like, nothing can defeat the Emerald Splash.
Something
defeats the Emerald Splash.
Yep.
But how does he do it? Well, he grabs the stand's neck, wriggles him around, and then beat the shit out of him with his fist. Yeah. The fact that, the Emerald Splash, Hierophant Green was going to be defeated wasn't a surprise at all. It was just, how is this going to get animated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to aura me now?
Right.
Yes. Super predictable.
Yes.
We always know that Jotaro or whoever is facing the enemy stand of that particular episode, right, is going to defeat them. And if it's Jotaro, it will involve an aura, right? Same thing with the lover's stand, right? We knew that aura was coming. We knew that it was going to be amazing. Yep. And then we get it, and it was amazing, right? It fulfilled
so
our expectations of, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm glad I spent that time anticipating it.
Exactly. And I think that JoJo's unpredictability does need to be praised for what it is. We have not seen, anywhere close to the limits of Araki's insane creativity when it comes to the character designs. For the wacky abilities that he comes up with these stands sometimes. Some of them are pretty canned, if you're being honest.
Sometimes we can tell that he reached the limits of his imagination and pushed further. Hence there's no such thing as a mirror world or that kind of deal.
Right. But all that being said, I think that's a perfect example of a show where you might not like it at all. Like, that might not be your cup of tea at all. But the reason why it's so memed to death, I would say, is attributed in some small fashion to actually its predictability, in that people expect this kind of stuff to come from JoJo's.
Okay.
And it is benefited a little bit because there's been so much of it until now.
So zombie squirrels, though. Okay. Now, one might say that's totally unpredictable. I would say that, yes, while it is unpredictable from the standpoint of specifically a zombie squirrel,
Right.
that is something we might not have expected, but we absolutely expect the kinds of things like zombie squirrels from JoJo's, right? We, even if we don't know what Joseph is going to pull out of his ass in order to survive, right? We know that he's going to do something, and it's going to be silly and stupid and just the most menial thing that has, for some reason, huge consequences, but we know it's coming.
Yeah.
We know
that the villain is going to die, but we don't know that Giorno makes a snake brick for an anti-vaccine to save himself.
Exactly. Yep.
Right. That is where anime, specifically in my opinion, is made for something like JoJo's. Because JoJo's is just off-the-wall insanity at times, allows for it to be beautifully displayed for us, because you couldn't just recreate that exact thing in live action and have it look like it's meant to be there. I think that's where zombie squirrels, for instance, isn't very memorable with regards to specific JoJo-isms, in my opinion.
Sure, compared to a bunch of the other JoJo-isms out there.
Right, if you were to put like the top JoJo-isms up there, zombie squirrels doesn't get repeated, not just because it's zombie squirrels, but just the idea of how they even implemented it. It might not be a thing that really gets, referenced again, or something that works in that regard. Maybe because it was actually a little bit too just out of nowhere for the sake of the, zombie squirrels. In that respect, that's probably why Speedwagon eventually had to go. Was because the idea of Speedwagon delivering a line to say what was already happening perfectly. Speedwagon has perfect...
with...
perfect perspective. He could only deliver that style of comedy or that style of, what have you, before it actually ran dry. And that's something that...
I don't know. I like to think that the reason was because he just couldn't figure out a way to make, Speedwagon immortal for the purposes of being in every part. And that's kind of what he's done with Joseph. And that's why Joseph just hasn't kicked the bucket yet.
I think that's
you just slow down the progression in universe of how much time is passing. That way, it's not that Joseph's immortal. He's just really, really old.
Right.
It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Another anime that I wanted to briefly touch upon, because it is a subversion story with regards to cliches, but it is an extremely predictable plot with regards to the individual conflicts.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yep. And that's One Punch Man.
Yeah.
One Punch Man Season 1, I have not seen Season 2, so I can't talk about that. But One Punch Man Season 1 had this wonderful, wonderful question brought to everyone there. Because the name is One Punch Man, so when he beats them in One Punch Man...
Yeah.
How do you think it would be interesting to watch someone defeat every foe in one punch? Like, man, how do you make that interesting?
I am very curious how these fights are going to get resolved. Do you think in One Punch Man it's going to be resolved with one? No, it's not going to be resolved with one punch.
The finale, it takes 2 punches.
Oh, no, but technically, well, and that's a subversion,
right?
And yet at the same time, it's not a total subversion,
right?
Because they say, hey, we're still sticking to the idea. We're sticking to the premise. We just sort of pushed it to the very edge of that premise by saying, no. He destroyed the armor.
Right.
And then he destroyed him.
Yeah, exactly. Or I've heard tons of fun theories from people about how Saitama does super serious series of punches or something like that. Because his other punches are not serious. That's the point. Is that he's trying to weaken his punches so that it might be more of a fight.
And then he's like, oh, damn it, I killed them in one punch again. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Pep's literally just brought up the thing I was talking about there. Yep. So that's one of the things that I loved about One Punch Man, was that it kind of reinforced, so it felt a little cathartic for me, is it reinforced the idea I had that a story doesn't need to be original in order to captivate people in the engagement and immersion side of things.
Also, one of my favorite parts of One Punch Man that is, less obvious of a predictability example and how predictability can be good. But it's still fantastic. Probably my favorite part.
Oh, totally. Yeah,
is
I know what you're talking about.
When Moomin Rider faces the Sea King.
Yep.
So, we know that the Sea King is only going to be defeated by Saitama.
Yep.
That's why Saitama is off in the boonies, butt crack middle of nowhere, right? He's trying to find his way here so that he can beat the Sea King, and it'll be great. Moomin Rider shows up after a whole bunch of other people have proven that, Saitama is the only one that's going to be able to beat this thing. We know Moomin Rider can't beat this thing.
Yep.
We also know what Moomin Rider is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to try anyway.
Yep.
We know it's not going to go well.
Yeah.
And it happens.
It happens.
And it's great. It absolutely tears our hearts out as we see it happening.
Yep.
And we knew it. We knew this was going to happen.
Yep.
But that doesn't make it any less entertaining.
Yep.
In fact, it would be less entertaining if we didn't know. If there was some idea that, hey, maybe he'll be able to beat it, then there might be some frustration that he wasn't actually able to beat it, rather than understanding what the main point of this is, in that what's the decision that he makes.
Right.
So...
And they even do all the classic formula things of ganbate.
You can do it.
You can do it.
And
then the hero, for the hero for fun comes in at the last second and just instantly obliterates him.
As we knew he would.
Yeah. But I will shout One Punch Man again, season 1. I haven't seen season 2. I'm not saying season 2 is necessarily bad or anything. I've just heard reputation things and stuff like that. But season 1's greatness with regards to the story is such that it is commentating on a lot of ways of how predictable a lot of superhero stuff is. Like, that is a huge thing. It is deconstructing a bit of the superhero genre in that time. And it's kind of funny to think about in that superhero stuff has gotten even more prevalent since then. Like, it hasn't gone away. We haven't hit fatigue anywhere near that point yet. If anything,
well, who knows? Maybe it'll finally be coming soon.
Who knows? But the journey of this character is one that doesn't necessarily ride on the plot conflict with regards to the fights being predictable or not. That's why in some ways I think everyone loves so much a lot of the fights in the show, is just because it executes so well the whole package of the fight, and it's not about whether or not anyone actually had a chance against Saitama. Like, Boros didn't have a chance. Like, he actually just did not have a chance.
Yep.
He was strong as hell, and it was really cool. But when your opponent is just casually moonwalking away from you like it's nothing.
Well, when you kick them up to the moon and they're just like, oh, hold my breath and jump back,
Yeah. It's over. So there we go. But I had to mention One Punch Man there. There's another thing that we were going to mention here that's a little bit on the kind of surprise side, and there's a specific memer in Twitch chat that'll appreciate us bringing this up.
Yeah,
because it kind of got brought up in the whole joke thing of
kind of a little bit
Game of Thrones versus
Lord of the Rings, but Lord of the Rings, like the whole you can tell what's gonna happen from page in age 5, right?
Right.
Yes, you can, and that's the point. It's fantasy, right? Like, it being unrealistic and all that stuff. It doesn't have to be the case for all fantasy, but it certainly is the case for this fantasy.
Oh yeah,
right. And we know that none of the heroes are going to die. Theoden is sort of thrown in there as sort of like, okay, and Boromir is sort of, well, no, even Boromir, we kind of knew he had to go. We knew he was going to.
Kind of,
So, okay, Boromir. I love Boromir as a character. Boromir is one of the characters that I didn't like nearly as much when I was younger.
Right.
And then as I got older, I started to appreciate him a lot more.
Yeah.
We know Boromir is going to be the antagonistic character, the problem character in the Fellowship of the Ring. There is no doubt about that, right? With how he's introduced and everything, we can tell it's blatantly obvious that it's just going to happen, right?
Yep.
But it still happens. And then, we start to see it happen. We see the motivations behind him and and this was something I didn't really appreciate when I first saw Lord of the Rings and read it. But oh yeah, no, where is this coming from?
Right.
Why is this guy the one that will obviously turn against them? Oh, oh man. If it had been a surprise that Boromir ended up getting corrupted by the ring, I wouldn't have cared as much. In fact, I might have been a little bit mad.
Right.
I know I would have been mad if Aragorn got corrupted by the ring.
Yeah.
Because Aragorn isn't sure, but we're sure. He's Aragorn. Of course he's going to say no. Of course he's not going to try and kill Frodo and take the ring.
Yep. And
that's not the kind of guy he is.
And then the side characters, sorry, I'm calling them that, but Gimli and Legolas never have even a moment's doubt with anything with regards to the ring because they're not that important of characters in the grand story of things. They're not necessarily going on some huge arc like Aragorn is.
Yep.
So there's that element of, oh, does that ruin our immersion because the characters that are, not in that, focused limelight aren't going to get that struggle? No, it's fine because they're fulfilling their role and their purpose of what they are in the story. They're the people to kind of be those bros for Aragorn in that regard.
In a similar way, Sam is not going to get corrupted by the ring, right? Even when he takes the ring, it's not going to be a problem because, we know Sam. He's Sam the Steadfast, right? Like he is going to rescue Frodo, once he finds out that Frodo's still alive. And yes, he will carry him up the mountainside.
Yeah.
Because, so, and that whole thing, yes. Would he specifically carry Frodo up the mountain? We might not have known that that's how it would happen, but we knew that Sam would do absolutely anything in order to help Frodo. It wasn't a question of whether he would, it's just whether he would be capable of it, whether Frodo would allow it, like whether he would actually get the chance to do it. But once he does, yeah, of course. So, and if any of you weren't a little bit touched by that moment when he carries Frodo up the mountain, I'm sorry. That is one of my favorite moments in the series.
It is. It's so good. Yeah. Remember crying like crazy when first reading his death chapter.
Oh.
Yeah.
Boromir.
I think that books in general, primarily for a lot of things, just the original material, just end up being, a better delivery of a lot of the specific things and stuff. One of the funnier things about actually the books is that they're way more predictable actually than the movies are specifically. There's a lot of Hollywoodisms that are brought into the Lord of the Rings movies specifically in order to try and make things a little bit less predictable, when it's like literally a good triumphs over evil because the evil is the darkest night and nothing can stand against it.
And the good guys are the good guys.
The good guys are the goodest good guys to ever good.
Well, that's Gandalf's whole speech in The Hobbit, it's not, great power that keeps darkness at bay. It's, small acts of kindness and love, right? Yeah. That's the point, and even if I don't think, I can't remember if that was actually in the books or not. I think that might have been in Fellowship of the Ring, because in The Hobbit, when he says that to Galadriel, because that scene isn't in The Hobbit. Right.
I don't believe it's in The Hobbit, no.
But I believe he might have...
I have the Hobbit books more memorized than I do the Lord of the Rings books because the Hobbit is so much shorter.
The Hobbit books. Oh, man.
Yeah. Whoops.
But things like that, right? That's the whole point of how Lord of the Rings is set up. So we know that kind of stuff's going to happen. We know Saruman's not going to win. We know Sauron's not going to win, because of course they're not.
Yeah, it is about the friends we made along the way in some ways.
Oh yeah, and by the way, one of the biggest differences between the books and the movies is that Aragorn was not at all conflicted about being the king in the books. He had not taken up the mantle of being the king and everything, but literally in the books, as soon as they go to depart Rivendell to, go to Mordor,
forge me that sword.
He's like, yo, Elrond, my birthright, that sword, forge it up, I'm gonna need it.
Yep.
And it was awesome. It exploded into fire whenever he said its name, and it was
Aragorn
great.
was a Chad lad,
a Chad badass,
cliched fire sword wielding hero.
Yep.
Yeah.
I still love Viggo Mortensen's Aragorn. I absolutely love both. Right? They're both done very well. But just so you know, that is sort of that was the original way it went.
Yep, for sure. So with regards to a lot of the things that we brought up a couple ways in which, just subverting expectations for the sake of it leads you towards some problems. We brought up some ways in which predictability is a good thing, like primarily. Like I can do a lot there, and a lot of the ways that it's kind of cleverly disguised so that we kind of accept certain structure things about the story and makes it easier for them to just deliver the story to us. But there are some times where predictability is a problem. And I would say primarily those ones there are where, for me specifically, is where, like you were talking about, an expectation, a promise is made and is given, and then it is no longer basically promised. It is no longer,
the promise is broken,
yeah.
or it's fulfilled, but there's usually with a promise, like with that promise of predictability of I'm going to give you a story and you know what kind of story this will be, but it'll still be entertaining.
Yep.
Usually there's that sort of second promise that's in there of, but I'm going to make sure that the ride is really fun. Right. I'm going to do some things that might surprise you along the way, even though you know eventually it's going in this direction.
Yep.
And usually where I feel like it goes badly with that is where the journey isn't inventive. The journey isn't imaginative. It isn't whatever. So you don't feel like you're actually getting anything new.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where I wanted to bring up basically the whole isekai genre as well.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
Isekai particularly have really good opening episodes. And a lot of them don't do anything in between episodes like 3 and 11 or something like that. But having recently gone back and checked out ReZero Season 1, one of the things that I very much appreciated about ReZero Season 1 was it basically does the whole, hey, I'm Natsuki Subaru. I am the self-insert, shut-in otaku who got suddenly transported to a fantasy world without context, and now I'm here, and I love it! Oh
right.
My god, I love it! I'm predicting things the characters say before they say it. I am, like, weaving through this just
Here's the
fine.
love interest, here's
Here's the quest pop-up, here's this there.
I just acquired my magic powers.
Exactly,
awesome.
exactly. But the best part about ReZero is those first few episodes are, in my opinion, actually, when you look over the course of the whole thing we've got thus far, they're actually pretty average compared to a lot of the other stuff.
Sure.
Because they actually take this character in a direction that is not exactly what you'd expect. If they had just gone the predictable route of everything fulfilling what he thought it would be with regards to this, like him being the center of the universe, everything revolving around him.
Even though it in this story, it really kind of does, like for very specific reasons.
For very specific reasons. Yeah, sorry, your power is not what you wanted necessarily. And it leads to some character arcs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, well, an A-character arc that is ongoing and off-going at many different times due to the nature of the story's start-stop function.
And once the premise is like, okay, so I mean, ReZero, if you don't know if you don't know the premise of it,
we don't have to talk too much.
We don't have to talk too much about it, but because it's not exactly an original premise, you know, like it's an isekai version of that, but that basic concept, that's something that we've seen in plenty of other movies and shows and things like that, right?
Yep.
The list goes on and on.
Yep.
So we know what we're going to be getting, more or less. We know that, you know, there are certain tropes even within this type of story that we can expect to see. And yeah, a lot of those happen. But then there's other ones that don't quite happen, right? Things like the fear of death, right? That's one of my favorite bits in the show that I feel like I've heard some people say that they didn't like it because it felt needless. It felt sort of like melodramatic or whatever.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But and I can see why they might think that, right? But then at the same time, no, pretty much no matter what the circumstances are, you will not want to die, right? Like you will be afraid if there's going to be some sort of terrifying, painful death coming after you, right? That you will avoid that at all costs.
Yeah. And it's so, in some ways, expected or predictable that your characters are never afraid of death in the story in any, like, realistic way, because this is my fantasy. And they're larger than life, and there's nothing bad that can happen to them that they can't overcome with sheer grit and or overpowered, you know, nonsense.
Or just getting to a new cycle.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And you know, yeah, that is a I had a brain fart. I just had a brain fart.
That's okay.
But okay, yeah, no. The whole thing of the audience not necessarily being scared for the characters from an absolute sense of they're probably going to still be able to spend time with them unless they get like randomly forgotten about or something like that, right? But the characters don't necessarily know that, right? So we can see even if the plot is predictable in ReZero, for the audience, in the details for like the particular arcs, how it gets resolved and things like that, that might be little ways to surprise us. But then also, the characters don't know that it's predictable. So, one of them might. One of them might. Yeah. But the rest of the characters don't. And in fact, when something is predictable, that's where you can get dread. In the same way that you can get like those cathartic experiences, I don't think you can really get that sense of dread without knowing that the thing's coming. It's not the fact that the person is running away from the murderer that's coming after them or that they're going to stumble and fall, but it's that you know that they're going to be caught eventually. You know that there is that danger that, oh yeah, eventually it's going to catch up to them. And then the thing that happens will happen.
Yeah. Wait, Kazuma is so relatable and Loki calls out an entire demographic just by existing. I love him. Are you talking about Kazuma from Konosuba, or are you meaning Subaru? Because we're talking about ReZero right now, not Psychronia. I'm curious, because I think you're right on both there. I'm just curious
Kazuma
which one
is also wonderful.
Yeah. But I'm curious which one you're actually talking about, though. Just strategy lover. If you take the story from the perspective of the other characters in the last route, where everything goes well, it's a pretty cliche story of isekai harem protagonist. But we've seen otherwise because we know the hidden truth.
Right.
Yeah. And I totally get what you're saying there, and that is true. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I love Subaru as a main character, is because it's like I hate using the term subversion, right? Because subversion of expectations and all that. But his whole character is kind of a commentary on not just the isekai protagonists that are out there, but also the people that specifically enjoy those isekai protagonists of like, hey, have you thought about where that might come from potentially? Like the whole idea of him white knighting Emilia and all that stuff. And it's like
his incel like behavior, basically.
Right. and feeling like he sort of deserves her or owns her or whatever because of all this stuff that he does for her. It's like, well, hold on. No, you don't. You know?
Yeah. I think he means when Kazuma talked about women using women rights when it suits the situation. Oh, gotcha. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Aqua definitely does like to do that.
Yeah. But Aqua's worst girl, so that
indeed
that makes sense.
She is the best
regard.
worst
That's
girl.
why we stan darkness in every way, shape.
I mean, and
manner.
Aqua's.
I
love how awful Aqua is.
Darkness is way above Aqua in my mind. Like Aqua is very clearly number 2 in my mind. I think Megumin is great, but I actually almost like can't really love Megumin as much as Aqua because her story and character makes a little bit too much sense.
Oh yeah, right. Like, well, in a lot of ways, I didn't come to this particular show for character arcs that make sense
and feel things and
stuff. Right.
I do love Megumin. I love all.
Oh yeah, Megumin is wonderful. But it's I want to see all of these stupid, ridiculous characters and and people that are more of what D&D campaigns are, right? That are how just awful people would really, handle those kinds of situations rather than the more romanticized versions that we often get.
Right. I didn't come to Konosuba for realism. I'm here for insanity. Some dumbass characters. Wait, have the bros seen the Konosuba movie? Yes, we have seen it. We have seen it, yeah. Kazuma or Subaru? Yes, exactly. Both of them. They are,
both of them are wonderful.
My favorite, at least, isekai protagonist out there by a mile.
Yes, I did indeed know that Megumin is a parody of Lena Inverse from Slayers. Yeah, I actually played a D&D campaign where one of the people did a, anime character copy, but not of Megumin, of Lena Inverse, and would talk about in great detail about how no, Megumin is the 2.0 explosion girl.
Ah, gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty cool. Oh, just to add to the comment about Subaru's conversation, because people get salty about him being kind of a loser because they want to project into him.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yep.
Oh my God. But that's kind of the gist of the That's the gist of the whole thing we wanted to bring up. There's a bunch of stories out there that are like coming back up again with a little bit of is this show really as good as it used to be? I would say one of those shows that's been like kind of like that for me is MHA. I think My Hero Academia has had some weaker parts in recent seasons. It kind of started off, in my opinion, with the latter half of season 3. I think that was probably about probably one of the weaker parts that was like, ooh, I hope this anime still keeps up this level of quality in the story. But in season 4, that was probably one of those moments where they went a little bit the unpredictable route with a lot of specific things with regards to the story in general. And I kind of appreciated it for giving it that effort. And so I wanted to like appreciate that specifically. I really feel like the airy Mirio kind of thing of saving hearts and stuff like that was really good. And then, of course, the most ridiculous YouTuber villains to ever exist ever were a really, really fun just detour from predictability for the sake of talking about this element of the world in My Hero Academia. But one of the things that it seems like in general has been like some of the critiques a lot of people have been bringing up with the My Hero Academia anime is that there's these new things being brought up and they're being handled in predictable ways. The concepts, some of them, can end up being kind of unique and they do some cool things and stuff there. But then the execution is where a lot of the problem is in that regard. But I really, really like the way the direction basically constantly falls back to the idea of the original core themes of MHA. Otherwise, I don't think I would really follow it as wholeheartedly as I do because it really just sticks along that simple theme of what does it mean to be a hero?
Right.
And every character's story basically boils down to that bit. And it's just, let's slightly deviate the focus to see which angle we can do on this here.
And I think this is something that helps reveal why people enjoyed MHA. Because, so, MHA is a predictable show. That's, again, perfectly obvious, right? The way the fights go and everything, it's, of course, right? The character revelations even. But that's why we watch the show. With people that didn't like, say, the Gentle Criminal and La Brava stuff, I get the feeling that the reason they didn't like it was because what they wanted as far as the predictable MHA was simple hype fights with good heart to them, right? But really hype fights. And we have gotten quite a few in MHA, right? But they're not thinking of it as the exploration of the what does it mean to be a hero. And that's why Gentle Criminal and La Brava seem so out of place. Because they definitely are not hype. Like, they're not hype like, Season 2
tournament
episode
arc?
10 was like that.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
like, that was all just hype as hell.
That was
super
absolutely
good
hype,
stuff,
right?
And a lot of people would say peak MHA, and I'm not going to disagree with that necessarily.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to beat, right?
Yeah.
But that's where I think that discrepancy comes in, and that's why I think properly setting expectations for your audience is so important. So that way, when you make the promise, one, it's a single promise, and two, that there is no question about what the promise is, right? Because, and that's one of the reasons why I think One Piece does this so well.
Oh my god, yes.
And yes,
so true.
While I know that there are some people that are a lot more focused on like the hype fights in One Piece and things like that, it's made pretty clear that it's more about the Nakama we made along the way and all of that stuff as we explore this giant world and everything. So when things like Usopp versus Luffy happen, right? Of course that rips your heart out, right? And that in my mind is the peak One Piece. When the black pages come in and we're like, right? That's again the predictability. All right, let's get another tragic backstory. Our tragic backstories a trope that are often made fun of for good reason.
And sometimes relied overtly on as a crutch for bad writing.
Oh,
yes.
Definitely.
Doubly so.
Definitely. But Oda's like, nah, I'm going to use them. And I'm going to get so creative, right? Oda, like, while Oda is predictable in the sense that his backstories are tragic, right? You know, that like you will be emotionally moved during his backstories. Otherwise, it's not a real One Piece backstory, right? But he will make sure to figure out some new way to get you with them, so that way he gets you with them every single time. Because otherwise, what would be the point of having them there?
Right. Yeah. I love the connection, though, between One Piece and MHA in that regard. It really is, in some ways, the whole reason why I would say a shonen, a good shonen, has the ability to go the distance, is that it continuously delivers on the promise that it set out from the beginning.
Yep.
And it doesn't change its identity for the sake of, you know, whatever. In some ways, that's one of the things of why something like JoJo's can exist and yet be so different from part to part.
Sure.
Is that we know that a JoJo is going to go on a bizarre adventure with a bunch of people that are going to be really cool, well-designed characters, spouting off all kinds of ridiculous metaphors and pointing and posing and doing all this crazy stuff. But as to what goes on in the journey, we don't know.
Yeah.
There's no way we could know. But by the time we watch that first episode of the part, we're going to get a pretty good idea of where it's going. Even if it's not, you know, got a lot of the details in mind.
So, since we mentioned One Piece, I'm just going to bring up the other two of the big three, Naruto and Bleach.
Ooh, okay.
So, you haven't seen Naruto. Nope. I watched a good chunk of Naruto and read a good chunk of the manga.
I think I've watched like 5 episodes.
Okay, yeah. So Naruto is one of those ones where even now when I hear people that were big Naruto fans back in the day, even if they have big issues with like the filler and things like that, they still look back on it very fondly. And I think that's because from what I could tell, Naruto still kept to its main guns, even if it had a bunch of problems that sort of got slipped in there with it.
Sure.
It was still, you know, okay, we have Naruto, this underdog. We have the friendship between him and Sasuke and the rivalry and all that stuff. And what's going to happen with their damaged relationship, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in the case of, say, Bleach, I think that one of the reasons that while there are definitely Bleach fans, it's not as sort of universally looked back on with that same kind of nostalgia.
With regards to the story?
With regards to just the story, but not necessarily the narrative side of the story, is because I think that there were two different reasons why people went into Bleach and got into it and enjoyed it a lot.
Sure.
One is because you have a stylistically really cool set of designs and fights and things like that, where you can have people with all these different powers and the 13 squads and the captains and the lieutenants and all of this stuff.
It's
and
this
you can
crazy world.
Crazy world, and you can have them all throw down and fight, and it'll be great, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's the other part of the fans that, that was cool, but the thing that maybe really got them into it was I get brought in. You have this teenage rebel kind of character that gets brought into this world and responsibilities that are attempted to be put onto him. And then suddenly he realizes that a friend of his is, one, taken away, but is at the mercy of an unjust system, of a bunch of stagnated adults and stuff that are doing things this way because that's just the way they do things.
Right.
But it's unjust, right? That's not right. So he fights against it. He overthrows it, right? Yep. That is a whole lot more compelling than there's a bunch of bad guy hollow things, I guess, whatever, that are off doing nefarious things because they're nefarious. And because we want to make it still similar, we'll have another kidnap rescue arc. But that wasn't all of why the kidnap rescue arc worked, right? And that's why I feel like,
oh my God,
when looking back on Bleach, there's the fans that are like, but there were still a bunch of really cool fights and they still enjoy it a bunch. And then there's the other people that were like, no, but there was that different way that it was being done in Soul Society. And that's what really made me fall in love with it, right? That combined with the really cool fights, so that when the cool fights came, it had that sense of catharsis, because you knew there needed to be that point where Ichigo did the Bankai, not because he finally had this arbitrary power upgrade, but because he was finally able to stand up for his friend and stick it to the person who should have been standing up for her and wasn't. So
I love how your Naruto reasons are way less specific than your Bleach reasons.
Well, Naruto, I feel like, stuck to its guns a bit better, and I don't have as much knowledge about Naruto and the like.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you guys are talking Naruto and chat, it looks like there. Resolved to carry out of my mission after a lifetime of trauma and being a child soldier. 5-minute convo with the MC. You convince me, I'll do things your way, bro.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that's nothing unique to Naruto, though. Like,
yeah, and yeah,
Yeah.
that is kind of a maybe an issue, but
Yeah.
it's not the main issue that Naruto really had to focused on. Like I feel like.
Oh yeah, we've watched Fate Zero and UBW. Yep, many times.
Fate Zero is another one of those good examples, though, where if you are familiar with the Fate universe or you've seen like Fate Stay Night or Fate UBW, Fate Zero is very predictable. They're fighting for this holy grail, but you know what's going to happen if they actually get the grail. So
right, for most people that watched, the Dean Stay Night,
right,
or just at least had any prior Fate experience before Fate Zero. Yeah, they probably had a very different experience with Fate Zero than what I had. Because Fate Zero
was your first one, wasn't
recommended to me before UBW existed.
Right.
So it was one of where I was like, I think Fate Zero was one of the first 10 anime I ever watched.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Fate Zero was one I watched before you even.
Yes,
and
you did.
It was one where I think you got stopped by hard exposition dump first episode.
No, I didn't even start it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think you had another friend that was into anime, and he really liked it, and he got you to watch it.
Exactly.
And then I just didn't watch it because I hadn't heard of it or whatever.
Right. Yes, exactly. Thank you for reminding me, Peps. I will remove that option. I don't want people spending their points on something that's not actually going to be
a thing anymore.
So yeah, let me remove the insanity die thing there.
Because we are definitely not doing that anymore. If you want to see what that was, go check out our Halloween stream that we did.
Yeah, it was something else.
No, so I would say Hunter x Hunter definitely delivers on its promises. And here's what it is. One, that there will be an adventure. Two, that expect the unexpected.
Yep.
Because, Hunter x Hunter is one of those ones that prides itself on being able to subvert expectations.
Right.
But if you look at the show, one of the first things that it does is it very clearly sets up the expectation that that things will be different. Right? That, like how many different shapeshifter, mimic creatures did they run into in the first 8 episodes? There were multiple, right?
There were quite a few,
and they were back to back
misdirects with regards to the way things were set up, and that was primarily, I would say, what made the Hunter exam arc so good was that when they actually got into the exams themselves, it was about using these unpredictable scenarios, which you knew were going to be somewhat unpredictable, to showcase how these characters react to that.
Right, and then it was all
basically we got to learn who they were because their responses became something consistent,
right,
based on those scenarios.
It was about the how and the why. The how, both with the characters and then also with the power system. So it's the expect the unexpected, but we're going to have this thing here so we can tell you that it's not just a bullshit explanation of it's going this way just because.
Right.
It's going to be internally consistent. We're going to be able to show you that there was a reason that it went this way.
And the main promise in Hunter x Hunter is where they end the story. Gon finds his dad.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the big promise that they go with this here, and they deliver on it at the end, and it's a very satisfying ending, even though it's not the end of the whole story.
Right.
Because that was the reason why Gon set out to begin with. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of the arcs end where they do, because it doesn't make any more sense for the characters to continue doing something at Heaven's Arena, for instance, when they've already done the thing with which they set out to do there. So in that respect, Hunter x Hunter gets lots of praise, deservedly so, because its characters actually consistently stick with their motivation rather than conforming to the typical plot arc structure of a battle shonen. So, there you go. The people that advise to watch Fate Zero first have bad tastes. It's the only way to watch it by the good order. Stay Night, UBW, Heaven Feel, and finally Fate Zero. All other heretical if you are true fan. Winky face.
I'm disappointed. You didn't recommend to watch the visual novel first or read the visual novel first. I can't believe you.
I need those mana transfer scenes. How dare you?
How could you even call yourself a fan of Fate?
Without cursed take.
Without recommending that people go through the visual novel first.
Yeah,
I'm
some of
disappointed.
It is borderline like hard to explain in a certain context.
Oh boy. But that's just anime in general, right?
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, any other like favorite examples y'all have of like, you know, stories that were really predictable and maybe in particular ways,
and you really liked them,
but owned that predictability? Yeah. Like it was a favorite part of it for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I'll go just with one of mine, but
sure.
I love Berserk with how it starts, and you know that things don't go well, right? There's
the anime specifically.
Well,
right?
the manga as well.
The manga as well. True.
You know, there was more of it in the manga.
The manga's more, if that regard.
Right.
Yeah.
But the idea that okay, something went very, very wrong at some point down the line.
In the past, yeah.
Right. And then when the thing happens, even though no one could have expected the eclipse, you knew that something was going to happen that was absolutely horrible.
Right. But you could never have predicted how bad it would have been.
Ooh, yes, Kaguya. Yeah.
Kaguya.
I saw some people mentioning this earlier in the podcast. Yeah.
Huh.
Kaguya has some of the most predictable comedy that I've seen. And I love it for it. Every time we get the Okawaii Koto, every time we get, you know, Chika teaching Shirogane some new thing that he's horrible at, right?
Right.
Every time we have, what's her name?
Well, them not get together.
Yeah, them not get together. Exactly.
Probably should.
Yep. Or the new girl and, you know, seeing something and being able to somehow interpret it as, you know, some very lewd thing that's going on right beneath her nose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Is Attack on Titan predictable for you? Well, Jacob and I have very different Attack on Titan experiences. So I would like to know, Jacob, when you were reading the manga, so you just finished season 1, and you're freaking out because there's a Titan in the wall, by the walls.
Yeah.
You know, what were you thinking when you went through the manga? Was it predictable? Was it, like, what was that journey like?
The most predictable things I feel like was, you know, Eren being the Titan, you know, that shows up early on in season 1.
Hold on. We're going to get a little bit. We should spoiler warning this a little bit.
Okay,
We're gonna talk a little bit Attack on Titan.
If you haven't seen Attack on Titan by now, what in the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you need to. The final season is almost on us, and we had to wait 4 goddamn years for season 2. So, fix that. But
fix that.
The identities of the 2 Titans in season 1, that was predictable for me.
Okay, cool.
Most of it wasn't. And
most of Attack on Titan is a show or a series.
As a show series, most of it isn't really predictable for me. Like there are some points where it is, but like the reason why I think for Attack on Titan it works really well is because Isayama is a wizard at being able to introduce something as a twist, and then you go back and you realize, oh my god, he was
obvious.
He was dropping hints the whole time, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole reveal with 2 characters in the early season 2 stuff, right? That might surprise you, you know, especially with how cavalier they are about.
But it didn't surprise a lot of
it.
people, apparently.
Well, and more importantly, well, yes, if you go back with season 1, even before season 2 had come out, if you had gone back to season 1 and with the understanding of he has already told us who they are, right? Like, you know, so that when the twist comes, it won't feel like it's out of left field, right?
I think
then it makes it super clear.
Yeah, I think for me, Attack on Titan fulfills the same itch, and you guys are going to hate me for saying this. It fulfills the same itch that I had with Lost.
Oh, no, I totally get it.
And here's the reason why I say that. Lost is a very controversial show for a lot of people. There's a lot of failed promises for a lot of people with regards to Lost.
A lot of unpredictability that went
for the
wrong.
sake of unpredictability's sake.
Yep.
But Attack on Titan has actually delivered on mystery box stuff that I didn't think they would genuinely be able to do. So, the reason why I love Attack on Titan so much, and the way I like get so into it and stuff, is because it makes me feel rewarded for doing that. So I feel like I can trust Attack on Titan when it gets unpredictable, because I know that there are paths laid out in front of me, if you will. And I am here for it. I eat the shit up. And in a lot of ways, that was the thing about Lost too, right? Yeah.
It was the promise that things would be wondrous and mysterious and that there would be questions, right? Questions on top of questions. And as soon as you get one answer, you get two more questions, right? That's sort of that kind of not mental gymnastics, but that's the kind of entertainment. That's a lot of the entertainment that you get from it, even though there's all the action and stuff that you also have in Attack on Titan, right?
Yeah.
So it definitely delivers on that promise pretty predictably, but if anything, the unpredictability of it is, one, how it does it, which is what you generally want to have happen, but also just the fact that, and maybe this is more a personal thing for me because I'm a bit biased towards Attack on Titan, but that it's actually able to keep doing it this well for this long and in all these different ways. It's like, no, surely you've played all your cards by now, right?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Attack on Titan did two unpredictable things that I would say is generally a bad idea.
Oh, okay.
With regards to just typical storytelling convention. It's just the fact that we're so attached to the mystery box of this story that we kind of give it a pass, if you will, on some of the things that it technically doesn't really do that well, in my opinion. One is the characters. I would say the characters are, in terms of base, like if you were to list like the 7 main components of a story or what have you, characters are like 2 or 3 on that list, like main important things.
Characters
and Attack
are
on
the story.
Titan doesn't do a good percentage of its characters justice in that regard. And I don't know if that's just the anime adaptation in general.
No, it's compared to the other things that and the caliber at which it does those things, the characters are not one of the strongest suits of the story. It still does them, decently well at a lot of times, but it's not the selling point of Attack on Titan.
Right. And then the other thing specifically is that which it kind of shifts. It's kind of shifting the genre a little bit. The way it basically is, which is a very
risky
thing to do. Basically, I'm one of those people that's still a little bit underwhelmed in some ways with regards to the first half of season 3. I feel like Attack on Titan season 3 just needed to be got through so that we can get the second half of season 3, and that's where the execution happens. But that mainly is just the thing of where in order to communicate some of the themes properly, we need to shift the conflict from humans versus titans to titans and humans versus titans to humans versus humans to titans and humans versus titans and humans. And that process is one that Isayama wanted to take us eventually to, but was like, that means we have to eventually go into the humans versus humans stuff. That kind of changes the style of story entirely. So this will be a little tricky, but bear with me, guys. There is a very important reason why we're doing this, not just in the immediate plot sense, but in the grand narrative sense.
I feel like one of the big issues with part 1 of season 3, other than the whole pacing, the pacing and how it was written and then adapted, and the things that they had to do there, was also that with what had been happening in Attack on Titan up till then, it wasn't focusing on the human versus human. Like it had a good amount of human versus human stuff in the first half of season 1.
Yes.
But that was the last time we got it. Second half of season 1 didn't focus on it at all. And season 2 didn't focus on it at all.
Yeah, right? Second half of season 1 literally had Erwin, like that was about it, basically. Remember Erwin setting up the whole trap, and it's like that was, you're letting all these people die.
Right, that was basically the whole bit, right? So, but like the stuff earlier on in season 1, I feel like if that had been tease that a little bit more and more recently,
Right.
and so that we had specific characters as attachment points for when the conflict started, then it probably would have landed a lot better. I'm not entirely sure how that would have happened, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we're about ready to finish the podcast here, guys. It looks like a couple questions that we're missing, but they're more kind of entirely new discussion points. Does he have a genre that you've never watched? I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be tough.
How do we know if there's a genre we've never watched any of? Because never is a strong word.
We've never watched Gundam. I mean, that's more of a franchise, but like
Technically, I probably have.
Oh, really?
I just haven't watched much.
Gotcha.
But like, what's NGE?
No, that is Mecha.
That's giant robots.
Yeah, Mecha and giant robots. But Gundam is specifically the.
Isn't Gundam just the
Gundam is technically a universe and franchise.
Yeah, it's not a
but
genre.
It's big enough that it could practically be a genre.
Yeah, I feel like that's just a weird discussion in
but
general.
It's specifically military mecha, like, you know.
But
like,
then, yeah, it's not. No.
Yeah, that's I think the closest that we would get to
right.
an anime genre we truly haven't seen before.
Right, but I feel like in that whole thing there, it gets so much more into the idea of, no, it's this very specific execution on the robots that are so, like, potentially possible, but
right, and the focus on, like, the themes of, like, you know,
yeah,
militarization and things like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, Violet Evergarden. That's a great example. Yeah, Violet Evergarden is very predictable. You know, it's okay. Violet is going to go meet someone, help them emotionally, and by doing so, she'll understand herself better, and she will write them letters.
Yeah,
cool.
I think Violet Evergarden didn't really give us too many promises in the beginning, but it might have taken a bit to seal the promise, if you will. I think the main promise that it gave was regarding the letter and how that would be tied to her arc with regards to expressing her feelings.
Yeah, trying to understand that phrase.
Right. But a bit of the world stuff in general, I think, is, if anything, one of the areas in which Violet Evergarden might be held back because it's just so pretty. Like, there's so many other things that are kind of sprinkled within there that every once in a while you forget that this is a slice of life primarily. It is less plot oriented, than I guess the earlier episode kind of sets up.
Okay.
A lot of it is disjointed little mini stories of her helping someone with the letters and things like that.
Oh, like we don't get to see as much of her like daily life when she's not on jobs, kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it feels like the jobs don't necessarily connect to each other as much. That's one of the things that I feel like Violet Evergarden is one where I, in some ways, don't watch it for the same reasons I watch other anime. I don't really watch it as much for the story. I watch it for the character study kind of things.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
But aren't those two, like, I mean, aren't those two pretty closely connected?
Not in my mind.
Oh,
for whatever reason, they're different. But you guys haven't seen a heavy cute girls doing cute things show on the channel. Technically, no. I think we've seen only like a couple that might be considered in that genre, but I think Jacob has seen some off the channel.
Maybe? I can't think of any.
I don't know what the popular ones are other than, like, you know, what's it called? Music band, cute girls with.
Oh, Euphonium?
No, the big one. What's the big cute girls doing cute things?
K-On?
K-On, thank you.
That's not heavy.
But it is technically like the biggest, probably, cute girls doing cute things show.
Oh, sure, but we've seen other cute girls doing cute things before.
But not really that much.
Place for the Universe.
That's it. It.
And Azukin, sort of.
No, not.
Cute girls making anime.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a really plot-centric thing. I feel like Azukin is a sports anime, personally. I feel like Azukin is almost 100% a sports anime.
I feel like if you call Azukin a sports anime, then you've got to call, like...
I think it's more sports anime than cute girls doing cute things.
But then, at that point, isn't, like, all musical anime sports anime?
Kinda.
Well, right, but, like...
Kinda. No, I think actually that's a great point. You can tell by the plot structure.
I think
whether a music one would be more sports or more like, you wouldn't call Your Lie in April a sports anime, right?
No, definitely not.
Not at all. It is not about the competitions in like. I mean, remotely in the biggest part of it.
It does bring up the competitions quite a bit, but
yeah, but that's not where the character story.
We're off topic by now, but
yeah. The dumbbell show. yeah. You've seen that.
Yes.
That's
half of
that's
it.
entirely a cute girls doing cute things story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like very much not about the plot. It's about, hey, we're gonna teach you how to lift weights.
Basically,
because these cute girls are doing that,
and we know that'll keep your attention.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's a good point, Hounds. I mean, I love Kanamori, but I'm not sure I'd call her cute. Yeah.
Sports anime is about competition. I think it's about some competition, but it could also be about the team growth in that
That's
regard.
The tough thing, because, like, yes, it's about competition, but, like, so many things are about competition. Like,
that's why I would say it's more about the group of people coming together to do the thing that is something that's going to pit their work, or what have you, against an audience, or even, if anything, another group of people doing it. So I would say Eizouken is definitely not really a sports anime, but I wouldn't call it a heavy cute girls doing cute things thing anyway.
Classical shoujo. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, other than like Sailor Moon or things like that. I watched some of what was that one? Princess Tutu. Watched a fair amount of Princess Tutu.
Okay.
But that is also sort of magical girl, so I don't know. Yeah. Although Sailor Moon's magical girl too.
Kobayashi technically had cute girls doing cute things in Kana.
Yes, that is definitely true. Yeah.
There you go. Grand Blue is a diving anime. Yes.
Okay, Grand Blue is another one where I would say the predictability thing actually plays into it a lot. Because you know all the jokes are going to be about alcohol and sex, right? And then occasionally they'll go into diving.
Nudity more than sex.
Sure, yeah, right. Yeah. But that still doesn't make it any less funny when it all happens, right? And with Chisa, we know that Chisa's whole character is based around that whole trope and everything of the reserved character that eventually is going to have that moment where they blush and it's really, really, really adorable, right? True. But it works. It works. And because we know that adorable blush is coming when it happens, we, smile and go, oh, you're so cute.
Yes. But okay, guys, this was a fun podcast. Brought up some cool discussions. It was cool to hear from you guys as to what were some of the things that you liked that were really predictable as well. But yeah, we're approaching the 2-hour mark. So guys, be sure to leave a follow. Stay up to date on all of our streams. 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Update your clocks to daylight savings, or at the very least, update just your time to know that we are 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we recently had daylight savings. So
because the U.S. is stupid.
Well, yeah. Daylight savings in general is stupid, but a lot of countries other than the U.S. do daylight savings.
It doesn't make it any less stupid.
I know. I'm not disagreeing. Not disagreeing. But 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Check out our streams. Monday's podcast. Tuesday's One Piece dramatic manga readings.
Indeed.
Wednesday and Friday, I'm playing Hades. And on Thursday,
I'm playing Persona 4 Golden. It's great. Yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah. You don't want to show them anymore, to have them keep it all tuckered in. I don't know. I'm horrible at this. My bad.
I didn't even realize that you were doing that until you said Tucker. I was like, what is Caleb getting on about?
Check out our VOD channel. Stay up to date with the older streams and stuff. Check out Jacob's sci-fi novel.
Yes, Batur Rhymes. It is on Amazon, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And, we'll see you in the next stream. But, take care, everyone, and we'll see you all later. Next time.
And yes, Nanako, and that's it for Persona 4 Golden. I was this close to saying, how are, when you were like, how are those going? I'd just be like, Nanako, and that's it. And just, that would be all I would say.
Wait, so is this a character that is antagonistic, or a character that is kind of helping the protagonist?
Very antagonistic.
Gotcha. So there's just this, them.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying.
Gotcha. Okay, well then, yeah, that seems like a lot of fun. Then there's a couple instances of that in like stories and games where you're just like, I can just say this one word.
Oh,
and
yeah?
everyone who's at there goes, yep, yep.
Like near?
Or like that one part in Battle Lines.
Oh,
is like
definitely.
17th chapter.
Yeah, 17th chapter. Oh